I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he's expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole edition 318 with Manifestopheles. Welcome, everybody.
Yo. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, guys. Nice to meet you.
Good. Yeah. No, well, it's funny because it's one of these episodes where you're in the comments of a lot of our stuff and we talk to you privately, but I don't know you personally. So this will, like I said in the green room, like kind of, I call these kind of stray cat episodes where it's like something I don't know, but the milk dish has been left out and something's purring out on the front steps. And we're like, what is this? And you're cool. You're up to some cool shit. So I didn't write a blip for this episode, although I should have, and I guess I can wing one. He's a Virgo, kids. He's into language and
For sure,
40,
yeah.
40K. He's an author, a poet, into alternative history. He's got all sorts of stuff going on. So that was horrible. I know. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's more than most people can say. I mean, most people know,
Word. So something that we do on the beginning of these episodes, and today is funny because I'm not gonna do it because it's bad juju or whatever. But it's a card I didn't want to pull this card, and yet
I mean, it's fine.
the 5. I gotta hold it up. The 5 of Swords. Swords are your mind. Fives typically are more conflict stuff. I must win at all costs. Battling your inner demons. The compulsion to win. Keeping a beneficial advantage. Letting the past pile up around you, kind of like clutter, and then acting out of integrity. And I know you're into tarot. So like I said, I'm less prepared for this episode than I could be. So I felt like acting out of integrity. I'm like, my God, I'm being called out by the cards already. So what, if anything, resonates for you on the 5 of Swords front?
Well, actually, this is one of the most generous readings of the 5 of Swords I've heard so far. Most people, most decks or like most booklets you find in the deck or like most books I've read are generally pretty, pretty negative about it, like about things like dishonor and things like that. But I definitely relate to the struggle and, how do you say, constant setbacks. Like, it's definitely, I do feel sometimes like my life has been like that. And, I make do. But it's always been like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back, kind of depending on the situation. We're trying to, so push as far as we can sometimes. I actually drew my own cards. So I got the...
Is that the 2 of Cups? I don't even know what that is.
No, that's the Ace.
Oh,
Ace
okay. Okay,
yeah,
one diamond. Okay. So
I actually got a new deck. So I got the playing Marseille.
Okay.
I just got it today. So it's a mix between Tarot de Marseille and playing cards.
That's what's up.
So it's got like the spades and the
Right.
diamonds.
A lot of people don't know. I mean, I barely know it because I'm into tarot, but I do it like intuitively. I'm not like studied. You're clearly a Virgo. Your Mercury's in Virgo, if I'm not mistaken. I got to look.
Sure.
So you're a student of shit for sure. And the fact that you are going that deep in, it's not traditional in a sense, like, but like it's not, how to put it. That's more old school vibes. Than like this thing is like whatever modern art and all this kind of stuff. What did you pull? The Ace of Pentacles?
Yes.
All right. So starting new things. I don't know if you've been on podcasts. You've talked to Xirtus and Naropa and stuff. So
I have. Yeah.
So this isn't popping your
I've
cherry
done my
there.
own too as well, like sporadically. I have a hard time keeping a schedule for these things. So.
Okay, well, that sounds like a Virgo's worst nightmares. My schedule's off. All right, so fill us in a little about who you are. Raphael, was there anything about the Five of Swords or the Ace of Pentacles you wanted to comment on?
I mean, Ace of Pentacles is great. Five of Swords, let me think.
Less so.
50. No, all Five of Swords in numerologically, according to Faith Trevane and Dusty Bunkers, the Divine Triangle, this would be, if I'm not completely mistaken, 55 is 1. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 59. 59, 14, 5. Temperance, Hierophant. It's not so bad, no?
Yeah.
He's a very
Yeah, it would
temperate guy.
correspond. Yeah, it does correspond with the Hierophant as well. You could even probably say that like the fives in general like refer to surrender, I guess.
Yeah, they're usually about getting your ass kicked and kind of being
Yeah.
because it's like halfway through the battle. It's like, oh, I'm going to Mount Everest, and it's like actually you're at base camp 1 and you don't have oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
So all right, so yeah, I in pulling up your chart, I saw that you were born in Berlin, but I think you live in Greece, if I'm not.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
I'm half Greek, half Dutch.
Okay.
Born in Germany. And I lived there for 10 years. So I did my elementary school there. I speak fluent German as well, even though I haven't lived there in years now. But so I speak Greek, Dutch, English, and German. A little bit of French, but not really. Actually, I can kind of read it and make sense of it sometimes, but I never could make it work. I tried multiple times with lessons and stuff and courses, but it never stuck.
French is beautiful, and it's not that hard. I took it in high school and stuff, but
yeah,
if you don't play with a language much, you tend to fall off of it. So, and I can hear I've been to Amsterdam and stuff, so I hear the kind of Dutch inflection in your voice now that you say it. So tell us a little. I mean, you as much or as little as you want about your childhood and stuff. Like, are you the only kid? Are you coming out of culture? Like, what kind of petri dish were you growing in your early years?
Yeah, so I'm actually anything but the only kid. I'm the oldest son of 6 sons. No sisters whatsoever. So like 4 of us were born in Berlin. The other 2 were born in Athens after we moved. So we moved in 2000, or actually 1999. As I said, I went to school in Germany. I finished school in Greece. And
I don't want to pause you. It's like 6 boys is a lot of guys. I mean,
sure, yeah.
I'm the oldest of 4, so I kind of get being the oldest. We shovel the snow and the others walk down the path or whatever. But how did that go? How does it feel to have like an army of brothers, basically?
Honestly, I mean, I'm proud of each and every one of them, obviously, and we're like because we're an oddball family. Because like my mother's a musician, my father is an architect. They've got both like their artistic pursuits and things like that. And we basically we grew up with 3 languages at home because mom spoke Dutch with us and our dad spoke Greek, but they spoke English with each other. And then outside we spoke German. So I think like what basically happened is that we each had a drive to like distinguish ourselves from each other.
Just out of curiosity, you are now fluent in all of those 4 languages, right?
Yes. Yeah. Even so German,
pro parenting tip, because that sounds actually quite efficient. Or was it too confusing as a child? Was it too confusing?
No, I mean, it's not that bad. You catch up pretty quick, because it's more like there's a sort of slang going on inside the home with like mixed languages, and so, and like even our dad, who doesn't actually speak Dutch, he does understand it, but he does crack jokes in Dutch sometimes, or like makes like Greek dad jokes with Dutch words and things like that, So we kind of had this thing going on always.
Because I imagine whether we take the official route or the alternative information that at least the both of us are into, I'm just thinking that it's pretty cool when you realize or you learn different languages that early. Because at least for me, when I learned them in school, I pretty quickly realized, at least with English, French, German, Dutch, for sure, there's so many similarities anyways with words and so on. Just today I spoke about it with French and German, although maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but still there is plenty of words. Whereas if you don't know the exact verb in French, you have some chances of thinking of it in English, and maybe then you remember the proper French word as well, because there may be other words, but quite a few times it's quite similar.
So you got hit up the side of the head with a Rosetta Stone, basically. I mean, it sounds like fun for you because you're linguistically inclined, so it kind of fit your, you know. Do you think that fashioned you to be interested in language, or do you? I mean, this is already kind of a heavy question. Do you think you were like, I need to be in a cockpit where this is the battle plan, and so you manifested in a life where this is?
Well, I don't know if it was that how do you say conscious of a decision,
like
but I mean, yeah, for sure. But I mean, well, on the other hand, I am me and my first brother are the only ones that actually really kind of do that a lot with language, but like on different playing fields. But you know, I've always been interested in the etymology of words and where they come from and what you know, and what they mean and stuff like that, and also what languages have in common with each other and all that stuff, for sure.
Seems like we have a bunch of polyglots in the chat. They're trilingual people working on their fourth. Somebody wants to know if you consider Greek the superior language.
Well, in a lot of ways, objectively, it's hard to say no. Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, yeah. It's definitely interesting because the thing is, like, it's been so influential in Western culture that basically all Western languages are in a very large part based on it, even if they're not using Greek like terms as such. They still use the same like inflections and things like that, and the same like mindset in how the language is built, basically. So the building blocks that Greek set out, which are basically the alphabet, you know, so the mix of the Phoenician alphabet, which is just you know, not the vowels, the other ones.
Consonants.
The consonants, exactly, yeah. You know, the Greek innovation were the vowels, basically. So they added those in, and then you got what basically became Western language, you know. And the terminology that Greek can come up with is so expansive that anyone can take these terms and use them in their own language as well, which is what we do.
So I mean, there's a bunch of questions kind of being asked. How old do you think Greek is?
Well, that I cannot answer. I mean, I mean, I'm split on that because we're still, you know, I'm interested in alt history, and there's definitely a bunch of arguments about, you know, Greek recentivism. Let's say there was this one guy that I found his videos very interesting, who was talking about that basically ancient Greece happened in the Middle Ages, in the Greek Middle Ages. So, and that's something I actually kind of resonate with, because there's a lot more castles, medieval castles in Greece than you would suspect, because all the attention goes to the ancient sites and stuff and the temples and whatever. But there's actually a lot of castles that are not Byzantine, because you have those as well, but that are said to be from like the Frankish rule in Greece after the Fourth Crusade, where like Greece got split up between like all these Frankish and Catalonian and whatever and Genovese and Venetian houses, and they were ruling over different parts and hiring mercenaries and fighting each other and stuff like that. But yeah, so, you know, there's this one guy who says that like the Siege of Troy was like in the Middle Ages, and it was written by a member of the Saint-Omer family, who later became known as Homer, and stuff like that, which is all pretty interesting because they're all historical figures basically. So there is a correlation there. And the same with like the ancient Greek philosophers, who, according to Fomenko and according to some, were actually superimposed, or were actually the like medieval philosophers. So Platon was Plato, and then there was another guy who was his student Aristotle, and things like that. But yeah, you know.
Well, okay, so
what I can say is that I no longer believe that Greek is fake. It's a fake language. I cannot subscribe to that idea anymore. But it's definitely a lot more complicated, especially with my research into the Pelasgian language and Albanian and all that stuff, and how those relate to each other. You know, which is a long story. We can get into that later.
We can start doing that. Okay, so you just alluded to the fact that you were growing out of a presupposition or an inclination, I guess you could say, of Greek being a fake language. Is that what you just said?
But also maybe just to clarify what fake would mean in that context.
Yeah,
that can also be like a sliding window, no? The definition of something is fake. Is something manufactured, or did it develop over hundreds of years?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the refinement of the language is too, you know, and I don't think you can fake languages anyway. I mean, maybe because, you know, we've all seen how Esperanto went, for example, and I mean that never worked out anyway. But so there's a lot of caveats to that issue. But I mean, there was a lot of talk. You know, Rafael and I. We looked into Fomenko and David Ewing Jr. and all that stuff, and there's a lot of things being said about what Greece was and things like that, and and about the ancient sites and how ancient they really are. And obviously, I do agree. There's a lot of question marks we can add to those things. Yeah, for sure.
But it doesn't seem like you full bore buy that it's a psyop or something like that.
Well, I'm not saying that either per se, but the thing is, because it could be that...
Just to add one thing with my very basic paranoid heuristics would be that, of course, if they make such a big fuss about certain particular sites in Greece, my logic would suggest most likely these sites are maybe not even so interesting and are diversions from things like you mentioned, maybe many medieval castles or other things where you could actually discover something. But it's, the attention is being redirected, because if anyone thinks of Greece right now, they think of which one, the Temple of Apollo, whichever it is,
exactly,
with the columns. Is it the one of Apollo? That would be super funny, because of course that would be the best symbol, archetypical fit as well, you know, with Trump and everything. But
Apollo Pharmakia and COVID and the Corona. Sorry, I'm not.
No, feel free to rant, bro. That's half the reason here. So, okay, I mean, you don't have to go into major depth like a book style, but I'm kind of curious how you, and there's no like nailing it in stone. This isn't like a, treatise or something, but I'm like, how do you look at, I guess we could just talk about Greece and ancient Greece a little. How do you look at the history? What is your belief of how things went? Is it so gray that you're like, I don't know? I guess when you were alluding to the Ewing Jr. stuff, he tends, and I haven't done research at all on this, Raphael knows. I guess his idea is that he's kind of taking the steam out of the narrative that's collectively accepted. Like Egypt isn't what they say it is. Or
well,
Greece
for sure.
isn't.
I mean, at least he tries. I mean, I think Fomenko is a bit more, because more people know him, simply, because of that. But I mean, so there are recentivists. Let's call them that. That's like in France, I've heard that's the term, the collective term they use for new chronology thinkers. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot. They all dispute the antiquity of especially ancient Greece and ancient Rome, I think, and that has to do with the fact that, or with the idea that there have been added like around 700 to 1,000 years to our chronology, and those have been filled up by the Dark Ages, and so allegedly, like, antiquity was before that. So up to the Romans was before the Dark Ages, and then you have 1,000 years of nothing in history, and then suddenly you have the Renaissance, and it all starts coming back, right? But the Renaissance, like culturally, is so close to ancient Greece, not just ideologically, because that was literally what they. So if you read mainstream history, Renaissance was all about reviving. They got access to the ancient Greek sources. They
1,000 years later, what a coincidence!
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So I mean, it could be that it's a direct continuation, and maybe there was a natural catastrophe in Greece or something like that displaced the population to Italy, and they started creating a new fictional just to kickstart their new culture.
Mhm.
They started to create a new fictional empire, like the Roman Empire, and started to, but because it was already destroyed, I mean, they came from a fallen empire. In order to kind of, in order to explain that situation, they created a whole history of like a rise and fall, something like that. But I mean, I've had my own theories, because obviously I'm there's a lot to be said for the role of Islam in all of this. So I'm pretty interested in how that worked, how big of a role that played in Europe, and David Ewing is very big on talking about that. And I developed my own kind of theory about that, about the Visigoths, especially. Mm-hmm. So the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths, basically, because they're kind of a riddle in our history, let's say, kind of a mystery. But at the same time, on both sides of the equation, because like the Visigoths were in the west and the Ostrogoths were in the east, so that's where their names come from as well. In both cases there's an overlap with Islam as well. So in the west they were in Spain, and then it became Al-Andalus, so it became an Arabic empire, and then in the east they were in Asia Minor and in all the way up to Italy. And they were taken over by the Ottomans right after the Byzantine Empire, right? So basically, you could almost, I envisioned it as like that these people are actually like a way to diminish the prestige of like the Andalusian and the Ottoman empires, and that they're actually, they're actually Germanic Islamic empires, if you will.
So it's kind of not a caricature, but like just a kind of a simplified kind of, you said riddle, but you're thinking.
Well, I think it's more like how do you say? Like black painting. I don't know what was besmirching.
Okay. You mean like editing?
Yeah.
No.
Well, no, because the thing is like the whole goth. Yeah, exactly. So the term goth has like a whole bunch of dark and nasty connotations nowadays, even though like we have Gothic architecture and stuff, but that like it has been associated with like Gothic horror and with Dracula and stuff like that.
Depressed, emo,
darkness, and depressed, and low vibes, And it kind of feels like that's been done on purpose. But if you the funny thing is, like, if you listen to goth music, it's all like in Arabic scales, in minor scales, which are really considered sad for some reason in Western ears, So there's something fishy going on there as well, There's all kinds of subconscious messaging there.
It's funny that you mentioned scales. I don't know if you're a musician. Are you?
Not exactly, but I mean, I went to a musical high school, and as I said, my mom is a musician, so my mom is a singer, so I actually have I have a pretty good singing voice and a good ear, so I can catch a note with my voice and stuff like that. I've tried playing musical instruments, but I don't know, it just never
it's
really
not your gig yet, maybe.
Yeah, but I do like singing. Yeah.
The reason I asked if you were a musician, there's something called obviously there's the major scale, the minor scale. Kind of you're talking about these things, but in a little more advanced musical terminology, there's called modes, which are Dorian, Ionian,
the Phrygian,
Dorian,
exactly.
Yeah. And these are Greek islands essentially. So in a weird way, I think the story goes, and I don't know if you believe this or not, or if you can speak more on it. If you can't, that's okay. But I guess the idea is like each island nation or population of groups of people, usually based off of their geography, were it's like they had a national anthem vibe almost. It's like this scale is our vibe. So
Yeah.
I don't know, one island is like, Mixolydian and kind of jazzy and fun, and some are like you were saying, Phrygian and stuff, kind of like dark.
That's an idea for a festival.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
different pockets is like, you guys only play minor chords, and you guys, it's. Had you
That
heard?
would be awesome
obviously,
for a jazz festival for sure.
have you heard of that? I mean, you know what modes are and all these. I mean, you mentioned it.
I haven't heard of that particular. I mean, I know that they're named after. I'm not sure they're islands either, because they're actually tribes. So you have the Lydians, you have the
Ionians,
Phrygians, and a lot of them are from Asia Minor as well, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are Pelasgian tribes, so they're Proto-Hellenic, basically. So that's another big part of that as well. But yeah, all I know is that what's his name? Who's the musical philosopher? I keep forgetting his name. I'm a Greek, but I keep forgetting.
The musical philosopher, what? The original dude, that guy with the
with the triangles.
Yeah, Pythagoras.
I was like, how can I be the first one who knows what you want to say now?
Because you're a genius, bro.
Yeah, totally. We just joked about it earlier, recounting between three friends, and we were like, what was Pythagoras about again? What is, root of, not root, but the a to the power, whatever. And whatever,
all that stuff. Yeah.
But
yeah, so all I know
music.
is that he came up with those skills. So yeah, I honestly don't know exactly why they're called that. And I don't even know if that's a Greek. I don't even know if Pythagoras himself called them that, or if that's a later thing. I actually suspect those names were invented during the Renaissance, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know much about Pythagoras. I've seen some Disney cartoon. I'm sure people who tune into Xirtus have seen this with Donald Duck and the sacred rectangle and the golden ratio, basically. But I mean, it got into tuning. I mean, there was a time my because I have yet, and this is Raphael's mission in life, probably. I have yet to do enough research myself to find any reason to look beyond the main narrative, which sounds so naive. Oh my God, now that I say it out loud. I kind of generally be like, okay, this is, like, sure.
I'm glad you recognize it.
Yeah, well, it's like, I don't believe it all. Like, there's got to be Swiss cheese to it, but I don't absolutely falsify the entire narrative, if that makes sense. Like, it can't just be, unless we're in a goddamn matrix and it's just like we rebooted at a time and whatever. But shit, I forgot. Oh yeah, so I think the trip with Pythagoras was he was in a sense not a precursor exactly to Christ, but he was kind of doing very kind of esoterically driven things. The tetractys comes from that. I used to want that for a tattoo, but the tetractys is kind of this alchemical, not an equation, but the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it goes to 5, but it might not. In any event, the triangle with the dots. And I forgot my point with saying this. I don't know where my train of thought was going. So all aboard the fail train. So I guess Pythagoras is this idea. Okay, I was talking about the golden ratio. It's my impression is a little bit more maybe romantic and naive, clearly, because I'm not a historian, but it's always been like, I feel like there really were, and this is probably true of every culture, it's not just to the Greeks, but the idea of the muses, right, being like there's inspirational archonic is a dark term maybe, but like inspirational archetypal forces behind every culture. So Odin and all this stuff, and Vikings got their trip, and everybody's got their own little kind of looking at the mirror kind of mode. But it seems like some of the gravitas of what ancient Greeks, whether it's true or not, I'm not even sure. Y'all play with that game more, but it seems like there's something behind it enough where, even to the degree where I'm like, I've never been to Greece. I mean, it's pretty. Mykonos and all that stuff looks great, but this sounds so weird. I feel like there's an element of myself, because I am a musician and stuff, that is like not a reincarnated Greek. That sounds so facetious or something, but it's like there's elements of the inspiration and the play of falling into an awareness of nature,
man.
Yeah, exactly. You see what I'm saying? Like the Greeks, it seemed like at some point,
is he
like
Greek
tapped in.
or is he Arabic or is he Arabian?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, so it's funny that you mentioned that, actually, but because so like the subject of my thesis in university was basically about the difference between like art and music, right? But we have to understand how because originally, like in Greek, you had techni and musiki, right? So techni is
Like
the
technique.
technical aspect,
Mhm.
exactly. Well, music it's literally from the muses, right? So that's what it refers to. So it's the ecstatic, like, state of inspiration that drives you to break through the art, right? So you use the technique as a foundation, but your goal is to transcend it.
Miles Davis said, learn all the music theory you can and then fucking forget it, basically. I mean, once you get the
Yeah,
basics, you can speak fluently on your own. You don't have to sit there and be like, is my
exactly.
umlaut
And then
in the
you
right
can
place?
afford, and then you can afford to make mistakes because you know how to, because you know how the, how do you say, how the
Like the fundamentals
melody
work.
goes, let's say, how the
Mhm.
rhythm goes, and what people will latch onto when you make a correction, right? So you know how to make the corrections in the right way, let's say, so that it still fits in the picture. And obviously, and the thing is, like, it depends on the art form that you study, how that balance works exactly, how far you can stray from the line and stuff. So mostly, like, usually, like, traditional, at least, visual art is basically like technique,
Mhm.
and then you start superimposing, or you start removing aspects of it to create your own ecstatic experience, let's say. But like in music, it's much easier, right? So if if your heart swells up, while you're singing, and you get like a lump in your throat, it your your voice breaks on that moment. But, like, that's what people crave, that's what that's what resonates.
Well, I was just listening to Carl Jung, something of his last night about overthinking, ironically, and he was talking about people being in the logos, like our minds. When we're overthinking, we're like, we're going to the ration and the reason and the logic, and that's
Yeah.
cool and all, but like ultimately, the unconscious, personally and otherwise, is like eros, like what you're kind of saying, where it's like this
Yeah,
erotic
exactly.
kind of passion, and that doesn't tend to play within the lines. I mean, it's the yin yang thing, so you got, it's like the Matrix. You got the architect and you got the fucking oracle. So
Yeah, and the purpose of music is basically to bring that to the forefront. So that's the catharsis that we speak of, like in philosophy, that Aristotle refers to in his tragedy.
Tell me more. All I know about music is Beethoven's little quip is like, it's the highest revelation kind of thing of philosophy is music. So it seems like it, like you're saying, it inculcates a level of vibratory participation at the material level that really actually literally moves us. Like, it's cool to write a
Yeah.
haiku, it's cool to do this
Yeah.
stuff, but it's not gonna, and I don't even, I'm not,
No, I mean,
there are many muses. So
you
it's
can
like
do it through that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe that, right? So, I mean, obviously, as a poet, I believe in, that I sometimes have the ability to tune in with my muse. It doesn't happen always. So, this year I'm not writing poetry because it's not, I have
For the
different ideas
Emperor
now.
was your poem. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally
Yeah,
kidding.
but yeah, exactly. But it's like you can't, but at the same, so it can be done in like 5 words, or like in a haiku or whatever. I do believe that. But again, like, it depends. So for Aristotle, it was tragedy. Tragedy was the highest form of music, right? And tragedy, like as we picture it, is like a theater production. It's not music as such, right? But obviously they had their own
Culture.
exactly. Well, not just that, their own terminology, right? So music meant something different than just melodies and rhythms, right? So, and even like verse on top. Music was, so theater was a big musical art form. So, like, now in modern Greek we have watered down those terms. So music refers to music as we know it today, and techni refers to like the other art forms, basically. And we kind of use them interchangeably, and they're not as pristine anymore as they were back in the day, But
okay, so I've got a few trains of thought going. But I'm curious because you were talking about like the pristine nature of language and how maybe because in a Wittgenstein sense, like it's always evolving, language.
yeah,
So it's going to have to represent what's being experienced by the people
Yeah, for
using
sure.
it. It can't just be so abstract that it's like, you know, highfalutin. But it okay, well, I'll get back to that in a second. I'm wondering what y'all, and I'm curious about Raphael. I mean, this gets into like daemons, not demon. I mean, this ironically said battling your inner demons, but that can also be like writer's block, as you're not listening to your muse, or you know, you're not looking into the right light of Apollo or whatever. What are your impressions of the idea of? I mean, how literal do you think muses are? Do you believe in archetypes as like transcendent things, and cultures kind of lisp on them, or do you think everybody's speaking to a particular multiverse reality? So like the tree of Yggdrasil is real, and if you pay attention in a Nordic vibration, and if you pay attention, do you see what I'm saying? There's no wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious how you
Yeah.
approach the mythic quality of the ancient Greeks, whether it's historically accurate or not. I'm not really worried about, but like it seems like they how would I put this? So as a musician and a creative, it seems like I always kind of say something like the muses. It doesn't. You can't demand from the muses. Like sometimes you get a band and they get a hit, and it's like hell yeah, and then like they can't do it again, like one hit wonders.
Yeah.
And it's like they're not tuning in right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have bands like the Grateful Dead or something where they're just like going for years, and it's like holy shit, I guess. Or Pink Floyd, they got a bunch of albums, but even Pink Floyd's a good example. It's like they fell off kind of towards the end. It's like it wasn't as inspired, if you want to put it that way. It was kind of like we got a job and a mortgage to pay, so this is how we do it. How do you approach the idea of like archon is too strong, and it's a Greek term, I think, but it's like, do you think that what's your impression of what's driving reality, I guess is a weird way to put it, but behind the scenes, do you think these are impulses that we anthropomorphize, or do you think they're actual entities, or how do you view that?
I think I personally tend towards the first option. So there are impulses that we anthropomorphize, but I do believe there's like archetypes that kind of fit together and kind of overlap. And I think it's kind of a thing. I don't know. I don't know.
There's no certainty. There's no certainty, and there's no wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious because you're a smart guy.
I'll tell you something, because I think this might be relevant, because like one of the formative books that I read as a kid in high school was the White Goddess by Robert Graves. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Never.
So he basically writes a like how do you even call that? Like an analysis, like almost like hermeneutical or phenomenological about like the poetic process and the inspiration of the muse and where that comes from, like in like historically, and how that's, I guess you could say like what implications that has for like the art of poetry in general, because that's what he was writing. That was just his thing. He was a poet as well, and he was just interested in these ideas. So obviously, he's an Englishman, so he was researching like Celtic traditions and things like that, and the Mabinogion and all these kind of old Druidic traditions. And I think the Mabinogion was Welsh, actually, but I mean, that all kind of merges together. But so
it was called the White Goddess. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and like the through line is basically the White Goddess, who takes all these different forms, and he connects it to ancient Greece as well, like Cybele, or whatever you call her, and Artemis. No, not Sybil.
Okay.
Cybele, or we say Cybele, and she was one of the goddess of the Eleusinian rites.
Secret drug trip.
And she became like the like patron goddess of the Roman Empire.
Okay.
Right, but and she had all these ecstatic rites where people were castrating themselves and having sex on the street and whatever, and drinking themselves silly.
That makes me think of Dionysian.
Yeah. But you had all these cults, and they had similar. Because the thing is that Dionysus was more like the savior figure, like the Christ figure, got sacrificed and was became
my
like the
flesh.
communion. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, something like that. But what I'm trying to get at is like the way I see it, because that's kind of my, and this is kind of I don't know, maybe a bit awkward to talk about, but like, I'm a guy, I like women, and I get to know women, and then usually nothing happens because I'm not good at that stuff. But so I maintain a piece of their existence, of their how do you say,
their essence,
their
essentially.
memory.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so that merges with other people I get to know, and that's kind of what I picture as my muse, and there's like a through line of like different people in my life that have inspired me. That's basically what it comes down to. And I think that's most poets are just basically
sensitive
haven't
enough.
that much love and haven't that much luck, like I have, and it's kind of like that thing, and it's kind of like your suffering inspires you, and that's kind of where that comes from, I think.
Well, you are poetic. You have a moon in Pisces. I mean,
sure.
I forget your stuff. So you're very sensitive, even though you do have a sun and Mercury in Virgo. So it's one of these catch-22s. It's not surprising that you're so analytic and like aware and dare I say like academic. Maybe it's a strong word, but more mental. But then you've got that moon in Pisces with a North Node in Pisces. So it's like you're here to feel.
Yeah, but I got like Mars in Aries, so I'm a fucking, and I do fencing. I haven't told you that yet.
No.
So so that's part of my thing as well. And the other thing is that so according to my mom, she always told us that we have like a noble heritage, right? So we descend from the House of Kuik in Holland, and they were knights in the Middle Ages, and they had like feuds with other houses and things like that, and they were not just involved, they were instrumental in organizing like abductions and things like that, and assassinations of other
they were
rival
gangsters.
families.
They were gangsters on horseback.
Yeah, but like they were, so I mean, they were nobles, right? So, and they had a specific role to play. And the funny thing is, like, they mostly were peaceful. They had like a very, very thin holdings, like spread out over the Netherlands. But they had really bad luck. So, and they ended up in these kinds of scenarios where they were the bad guy in the worst way possible, even though they were trying to do right, and it's one of those things that always stuck with me as well. And I definitely think that's part of my karma, because it's I still don't know, because I've done some bad things in my life, let's be honest.
Sounds like a rather human predicament.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like we all fuck up sometimes.
Yeah.
It's that one step back. I guess the beginning of wisdom is because knowledge is cool, but like wisdom is the application, usually through sorrow, like tragedy, where it's like 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 because you stubbed your toe or whatever it is. Somebody asked, what's his Venus in astrology? How's that important? How it's your vibe. Like I usually,
I'm a Venus in Cancer, or Cancer in Venus.
Yeah, you are, as well as Chiron. 8th house Venus in Cancer, so it's like you love when you said that you like kind of take well, I wasn't going there, but it's like you're nurtured. How would you put it? You're suckling from like the tit of the Roman mythology, where they're like, oh, Romulus and Remus or whatever. They're like, oh, we're gonna suckle on this thing. You're suckling from life a little like that. The way when I give readings, I talk about Venus is like, essentially it's like, what's your aesthetic? What pleases you? What gets you off? Potentially because love or whatever, right? Sexually. But it's like, I usually give readings to women, unfortunately, for whatever reason, but it's like
it makes complete sense to me, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's whatever. But so I'm like, are you wearing stiletto pumps? Are you wearing Birkenstocks? Are you barefoot? Like, what's your style? Because everyone's got a vibe. And granted, anybody can, in very much a Greek kind of mythological way, it's like you could tap into Aries, you can tap into Venus, or any of these archetypes. But anyway, just to answer somebody's question, they asked what's his Venus. It's in Cancer, so he loves boobs probably.
Yeah, I'm definitely a boobs guy. Although obviously I like faces too.
Right. Well, sure. You're being you're a poet. It is what it is. But you're the poet who's like trying to make it like bridge the gap between the raw inspiration of Eros and like Sudoku or something like
And-
that. Or you're like, I want to paint by numbers and know exactly how this works, but it is
Yeah.
beautiful and it's transcendent. All right, there's so many things we could talk about. You mentioned fencing. I mean, I want to talk about you. You've written books, and you were talking about. I think if I didn't misinterpret you, that you've written about a language of birds, like ornithology of
Yeah.
birds, like birds.
Well, indirectly. So
Okay,
what
just
I
briefly,
wrote-
guys,
Yeah.
before you go on
Yeah.
with the birds, I totally want to get there. I just realized I muted myself.
Oh,
So
he had a
yeah.
whole fucking epiphany
So-
drop.
No. I just want to make you both
Rewind.
hip to something which you both may enjoy because you both do with astrology, right? Manifestopheles also, or mainly tarot.
Well, I'm mainly tarot. I'm new to astrology, but I started looking into it.
So let me
recently.
give you this because a friend recently told me about this, something that I think maybe he came up with it. So you may both be familiar with human design, right?
Yeah,
Human design, yeah.
4-1
Human design?
sacral generator.
Human
it's
design.
like an I Ching. Dude, I'll send you some personal links. Basically, this guy got a huge download in Ibiza in the 80s, and he wasn't into astrology, but long story short, he's like
Supposedly on drugs.
well, I don't know. It's one of the most X-Files stories I've ever heard, but basically it's synthesizing the chakras, astrology, the I Ching, a few things. It's almost like, there's iterations. The song is never the same in a sense, or the song remains the same, I mean, Led Zeppelin style,
Okay.
but there's always like new kind of forms, like, of
course, yeah.
even Greece started, and here we are now. Anyway, I don't need to
So,
rant about that.
that's
Yeah,
great.
HD.
Long story short is that there you have two main measurements. They also are related to planets and to things you can find in astrology. So there's a link there, but you have two main ones. One is the conscious aspect and the unconscious aspect. Then you have all these planets defined for both. And I believe the unconscious, so the conscious one is calculated from your time and day and location of birth.
It's when you
And
popped
the
out.
unconscious is 88 degrees before that.
Right. It's
Because
like 9
supposedly
months before,
something
6
there
months or something.
happens.
Yeah.
And what you can do now is you can do your astrology chart for both of these dates. So your birth date and 88 degrees earlier. You can calculate
Okay.
these things online. And then you can do there's two, one is a synastry chart and the other one is like a composite chart or something.
Mhm.
And at least according to my friend, I'm not sure if you spoke with him also maybe, Michael Franz Reinisch, maybe we spoke with him about wheat. I know we did Starvation of Consciousness on Europa about the wheat topic, but he also does human design and astrology.
I feel
And
like
he told me
he's been
about
on
this.
that podcast.
Yes, I think so. He should have been. And he told me about this, and then he was reading my chart a bit, and in a way, whatever, if you're on a frequency, you can interpret anything into anything, but still it's an interesting exercise to do both of these calculations and then look at the synastry or composite charts and see how well they fit, just like in comparison. At least that's what I do, and can also give some interesting insights.
That's
Interesting.
fascinating.
I'd love to look into that for sure.
It's a whole rabbit hole. I'll send you some links and you can lick the
Awesome,
cup and
yeah.
see if you like it. It's funny that Rafa, you were saying that because basically in a weird way, I mean the conscious and the unconscious aspects, the red and the black in the chart or whatever. I had never thought to look at a composite, which is like together, what are they as a new creation? Like, the 1 plus the 2 is
Exactly.
and
Assuming
the
everything
synastry-
is like an energy field or something, if there is anything to this science, that's maybe
well,
one
it's a
way
permission
to
slip at
look
least.
at it.
But
At
I'd
least, yes.
never thought about. It's almost like, how do I make love to myself? That's a weird way to put it. It's like, what am I creating with my own energy?
Well, of course, because how much
Yeah.
isn't life about integration just of your own personality and whatever random doors to the infinite that are opened up?
Yeah, listening to that Carl Jung thing the other day. I mean, I'm not in a dark soul night of the soul right now, but I'm like, damn, how much into my persona am I like? It's like, yeah, I'm a son of a Gemini. I like playing around, but it's like, I think there's more to it than that. Anyway, we're all over the place, so I'm not sure what we want to talk about now. But even
You started about fencing.
oh shit, yeah, we could talk about that. You do have you were saying fifth house, which is like your heart. So you're like, I want to. You play for fun. I mean, you're a competitive dude, but you're playing from the heart. You're not a total asshole. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Mars and
I like
Aries.
to
I
think
mean,
about it.
your actions are
Oh,
words.
I remember what we.
Fill in the gap.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, we're gonna talk about the
Birds.
language of the birds. Yeah.
Bird gang.
So okay, so
Go for it.
this is one thing. So my grandfather once taught me how to tweet like a bird. Like I don't know if I can do it now because yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Stuff like that.
If you can go, what I just did. Okay, so it's like there's a straight whistle, like if you can do that,
Exactly. Yeah.
you can make it.
I sometimes can, but I have to be well hydrated. But so
like a plant.
Yeah, because it's like because I don't know if you've had, for example, like one of my brothers once went to the zoo. And he got like a little bird flute, like an ocarina, and you filled it with water, and then you blew in it, and it sounds like a bird, right? So that's it's literally like if you have enough, if you're, I don't know, if your throat is well hydrated enough, lubricated, yeah, it makes the sound just right. But yeah, it takes some practice. But so I don't. So that's
how did you fall into birds?
Just kind of
start. Okay, we'll just go down the bird rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
How did you turn on to this? Birds are cool and all that, but like, what about language?
Well, it's not literally. Yeah. So it's not obviously not about literal birds, but the birds are like a metaphor in this whole thing. But so, and it's a pretty recent thing that happened because I started looking into my Greek heritage, right? So I knew a lot about my Dutch, I had the whole history and the medieval stuff and whatever. But then I started looking into the Greek side. And obviously, so my last name is Arvanitis. And Arvanitis is a specific, so the Arvanites are a specific subgroup, language group in Greece that speak Albanian. And they have been here since like the 12th century. At least, right? But there's theories saying they date back from, that they've always been coming here. And we've had recently, like in the 90s, we've had a new Albanian wave of migration, let's say, from when communism fell in Albania. So this seems to be like a recurring theme in Greece. And they seem to come over and basically replenish our populations every now and then because Greeks are lazier and they travel a lot, so they leave behind fewer children, at least in Greece, right? So it's a bit of a kind of like kind of like that, like a symbiosis between those two countries, but they hate each other, obviously. Not all of them, but in the big lines. But so the thing is like. So the Arvanites were a subgroup of Albanians living in Greece since the Middle Ages, and they had their own like dialect, which is basically like medieval Albanian, which is still being spoken in Greece, and it's it's on the verge of extinction. But there's still people and there's still villages, especially in the north, where that is still being kept alive. And so I started studying this language. I bought some books, and I met some people. Willing to teach me and this and that. And I wrote a book about that. But so the one thing that got me, it's Kunge Lakonike.
That's in Greek. Okay.
No, that's Albanian. That's
that's Albanian.
Yeah. So Kunge is song, Kunge or Kunga. So the thing is like the particle goes on the end of the word in Albanian. So if you say one song, it's Kunge, like a song. Kunge, but if it's the song, it's Kunga. So it gets the comes at the end of the word, let's say. So if it has a specific, suffix, then you know that we're referring to specific thing. And Lakonike comes from Laconic, so Laconic. It's an ancient Greek word of how the Spartans called themselves. So Laconic. You may have heard the term in English as well.
It's an adjective. I couldn't tell. I think I thought it meant like lazy, but I forget now.
No. It means someone who's thrifty or who lives a simple life, doesn't talk much, especially the last part. So we have a saying in Greek which goes "lakonizin esti philosophin," which means to how do you say? To be silent. To be silent is philosophizing. Yeah, but so Kunge Lakonike means like a laconic song, so with few words, right? And that was because I wrote a bunch of haikus and tankas and things like that, so short poems, because I was practicing the language myself as well. I was practicing writing sentences basically. And so, but in one of my vocabularies for Arvanitica that I got, it refers, if you look at the entry for the words for Arvanitica, for the language itself, how they call the language themselves, it says Arboricht, blah, blah, blah. It explains what it means. And then it comes with Juga Zogut. So Juga Zogut means language of the birds. So according to that writer, at least, the Arvanites called their own language the language of the birds because it was more melodious and things like that. And that's where the title of my blog came from, and that's basically what became the through line in my poetry. So I wrote a lot of poems about birds as well. That was just a thing to make it a bit more obvious. But so I started looking into that after I started writing, and so that's how I that's how I met Raphael and the Team Rabbit Hole group and stuff like that. Because obviously I started talking about Arvanitica because that was interesting with regards to David Ewing Jr. and all that stuff and the alternate history, because there's a lot to be said for the Arvanites being like at least for like the modern population of Greece, in large part, I think, consists of Arvanite blood. Things like that.
Sophia wants to know what your favorite bird.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'd have to go for the owl.
Oh yeah, Athena.
I mean, yeah, Athena is my muse. I mean,
no shit. Oh, you're Virgo, of course. You're like, I got to be smart, but also helpful.
And it's, that's one of the other things. So, for example, in my book, or in that same vocabulary, actually, in that same dictionary, I found a term. There's like this theory that the name Athena comes from Albanian, from Athena, and Athena means a saying, something that's being said, or words of wisdom. Mm-hmm. So it kind of clicked for me. It was like, yeah. So yeah.
So in that sense, which comes first, the chicken or the egg in bird terms? Do you think that because people said Athena meant like kind of a virtuous, wisdomous kind of saying?
Yeah.
Is that why people attributed it to an archetype beyond that? If that makes sense. Do you think people were saying, hey, this is
what they're saying? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's true. It might be coincidence as well. And like specifically like in Arvanite society, Athena means like is like a saying, like words of wisdom or something put into rhyme. So it's not just a saying, but it's like it's a little like how do you say,
more magical, a little more inspired. It's like
exactly.
It's a packaged
and it seems
wisdom.
to have been exactly. It seems to have been like something of a folk tradition, and that's also what I base my poetry on. Like the premise I base my book on is basically that concept. So it's all tied in together with each other.
So haikus are obviously Japanese poetry.
Yeah,
like the structure at least. Did you want to read any of your haikus?
Oh, I guess we could do. Yeah, I could read a few.
You might have to translate them if they're not in English. Obviously, they're in English.
I've written translations for all of them.
Oh,
so my book comes out. It came out in like 6 languages. So you have Arvanitica, Modern Albanian, Greek, English, German, French.
That's crazy.
Obviously, I mean, I did some machine translation here and there. I mean, I couldn't cover everything, especially with French. I'm not, I'm not fluent actually, but it was a fun thing to do. And I mean, I have a history in translating poetry because it's just something I like doing, and I used to do that in university a lot. In my previous creative spurt, if you want.
You're a sensitive soul, dude. Moon and Pisces. You're like, I want to be moved at the core. It's not surprising. Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but if you got some poetry, you want to slam us.
No problem. If you'd like, I could share my screen as well. I could,
I think on the bottom, it says present. I think that's how you do it.
Oh, hell yeah. Share screen. Let's see. Screens easier with 2 monitors. Yeah.
Hide the big titty porn now. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
I only said that
Wait,
because
no,
of Venus and Cancer, and Cancer rules the breast.
You can-
Yeah, of course. No. So, for example, this
Yes.
this was my most recent one, and here I have the translations as well. But so as you can see, we write Albanian with Greek letters, and then we throw in like a Latin E here and there, and that's kind of how we do the sound. And some people even use J's, Latin J's. But so the poem goes as follows. It's called Dragua, which means dragon. Don Quixote de vente muli vete eres, lufton turbina. So instead of windmills, the new Don Quixote would be fighting with wind turbines. Sorry, it's been a while.
No, you're cool. I dig it. I get it. It's like it's a new iteration, same as it ever was, but not quite exactly. That's cool.
Exactly, and the thing is, like, it also kind of connects with like natural catastrophes in Greece, because usually when a forest burns down, they build wind turbines and things like that. It's been a while since I've had some practice with the language, so it's a bit. Let's see if I can find anything else. I like this one as well. Plisi barde de fesi kuchi jane pjese një proces alchimik, which means the white fleece and the red fez are part of the same alchemical process, and this refers to like the Albanian hats, the white woolen hats that they wear, and the fezes that the Greek Albanians used to wear, which are red, right? So you have the red and white, and you have the alchemy of the red and white, right?
I mean, talk a little about that. I should know more. I should be able to just jump on that. But what is your interpretation of your own inspiration here? The red and the white, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I've had my theories about how like the wars between our peoples and things like that are basically twisted alchemical process, basically set up by our overlords, and it's kind of like, and that's why they wear red and white hats. That's the only thing that distinguishes them from each other. They look like,
basically. Cousins, obviously.
I mean, yeah. And obviously, these two are like Albanians. They're not, because obviously in Albania they had those two. Because you will notice that one is wearing the fustanella and the other is wearing the pants, the trousers. So this is a gag. How do you say? Oh yeah, exactly. It's killing the birds. Yeah. So this is a gag outfit and this is a task outfit, right? So you have two main tribes in Albania, north and south. And the Tusk are closer to the Greeks, while the Gag are more Germanic, I would say, more Alpine, and so they wear the trousers.
I mean, this is not. I have two questions. They're not completely random, but is there a reason you chose haikus? I love haikus. I think it's a great little form. Are you interested in Japanese at all, or were you just like, that's a great little novelty
of course
to
I
use?
am. Yeah. No, I've done some Japanese lessons as a kid and stuff, and obviously I used to be a weeb for the longest time.
Anime.
And I used to draw as well.
Okay.
A lot of anime characters and stuff. It's been a while since I drew anything, but that's because my tablet broke. I even did commissions like as recently as 2022 and stuff. But
that means you don't suck. If people are going to pay you for it, that means you don't suck.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some success for sure. I mean, I'm not the best for either. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's been a fun run while it lasted. But unfortunately, it did break down. So yeah. But I like this one as well. Një vajzë bukur denji përpara mua në metro. Duke vëm përpara këmbëzet të tonat vajzërore, which means, or vajzëtore actually, which means a beautiful girl got in on the metro and sat down in front of me, flaunting immaculate feet, wrapped in gossamer sandals. Okay, so the last line was added to the English to fit, because it's a tanka, it's a bit longer. Otherwise, I wouldn't have enough syllables. But yeah.
I'm telling you. I mean,
This was actually a picture I took on the metro. That was pretty.
You documented the experience. Hey, Quentin Tarantino approved. Feet are cool. My girlfriend's a Pisces. Pisces
sure.
rules the feet, and your moon is in
But,
Pisces.
I mean,
So
you
it's
gotta
not
say
surprising.
these are some really pretty feet, man.
Not my type, but I'm not gonna put my girlfriend's feet on blast and show the world. But yeah, to each their own. I mean, you can keep reading poetry if you want. I'm trying to think. Okay, so, but my question was it just a convention that you decided to use and utilize for your own methodology, or was there deeper reasoning for using the haiku form? Were you just like, this is a good vehicle? I like poetry.
I mean,
that works. It's quick. It's fun.
It was partly a practical choice because as I said, I was trying to practice the language. So I was, my preference went out to short sentences and things that I can say in one breath. And the other thing is that I already had like a big back catalog of poetry I had already written like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And a lot of which was, or at least the best of which, most of the highlights that I had written back in those days were haikus as well. I mean, I had written a few sonnets and things like that, but sonnets tend to get tedious, and it's kind of tough to make them like sound
Stand
meaningful
out.
and stand out. Yeah, because there's a lot of rhymes and things, and you gotta pay attention to a lot of factors. Long sentences and things like that. And I got, even though I love them when I get to read them, when I read Rilke or like I don't know, you name it. Rilke is my favorite. Like Shakespeare, I guess. Yeah, I mean Shakespeare, sure. And no, his sonnets are on point. I gotta say.
Letters to a Young Poet, I think, is Rilke's book.
Sorry?
Letters to a Young Poet, I think, was a Rilke book I read. I'm not even sure now that I think about it. I think he's buried in Switzerland. I might have been near his grave somehow. All right, so there was a practical approach to the reason you use haikus, and if people aren't into poetry, it's almost like picking up an open tune guitar or something, or playing all the white keys on a piano, where it's just like it as long as you know the form. I think it's 5-7-5 for the syllables, right? As long as you know the form, you can plug it in, and it in a weird way it frees you, I find. Like it's like that Japanese bondage art or whatever with the ropes, kimbuki or whatever the fuck, I don't even remember what it's called.
Exactly.
It's like the art of tight binding is what it means, but I forget the word. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, I didn't just write only haiku, right? So I have a haiku tanka, and I also have a few like outliers. I just remembered one that I really like. It's probably my favorite. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm reading some of the comments where you're pulling it up. Because of the forced nature of the haiku, it causes you to be creative in a different way. I mean, it reminds me a little actually of
agreed.
The guy, what is his name? Brian Eno. He's a producer, but he used to be a rock and roller or whatever in England. And he had these divination deck. I forget what it's called. I think I forget what it's called, but it's great. People should look this up. Brian Eno divination deck. I forget what it's called. And basically, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I can see it. It's almost like roundabout ways or something, some weird term. But it's kind of like if you're a creative and you're stuck, read these cards and they're gonna make you do a prescriptive that maybe you wouldn't thought of. So it's like write a song with about, I don't know, only colors or whatever. It's like forces you into a zone where it's going to cause you to rise creatively in a very different way than you would naturally do. I gotta figure out what that book is called. Anyway, Raphael, if you find it, let me know. I could kind of search too, I guess. Anyway, you can read your poem.
Yeah. Okay, so I got this one is called Leleku, which means the stork. Leleku mekrahune thyre, shokune saya dote presse, po geraiga xenitja dote marte kthyrit, despetimin esaya kabesse. So it's almost like a limerick, if you noticed.
It had a little lilt to it, yeah.
Yeah. So the stork with the broken wing is waiting for her mate, and until he returns from his migration, her faith safeguards her fate. So the word besa in Albanian is basically, it's one of our most important words, and that refers to its faith, basically. But so when we say besa, it's like you give your words, right? And like if you don't keep it, you're liable to get killed. So it's a big deal, and it's one of the and the thing is like the stork. Like I have a theory about the stork being the actual because the term Pelasgian is said to be cognate to Pelargos, which means stork in Greek. And then you also have the Leleyes, which is another Pelasgian tribe, according to Herodotus and all these people. And that's cognate to Leleku in Albanian, which is stork in Albanian, right? So you have two terms for Pelasgian in two languages that are kind of like on the I don't know, like mom and dad, like of the Pelasgian people, or like its offspring rather. And again, it's like an egg or bird or egg question, chicken or egg. So that was like kind of where the inspiration came from, basically. And it's funny because
I just remember what the thing, Brian, by a TikTok.
Well, no, it wasn't actually a TikTok. It was like an old YouTube reel about like a guy in Croatia or something who took care of a stork who broke her wing, and then her mate. She found a mate, and he kept migrating back and forth, but he would remain true to her, right? So he came back every year.
That's what's up. Oblique Strategies is this little Brian Eno thing. There's a free PDF of it. People should do it. I think I have it on like an iPhone or somewhere. I actually might have used it once, but it was one of these things where it's like, oh shit, this is a great way to use almost defibrillator on your creative process, because sometimes people can get stuck, writer's block, whatever. How do you deal with writer's block? That's a weird way to put it.
Well, I don't know that I do, honestly. Like this book was like I don't know, it just kind of happened. I came up with this idea, and then I was like, okay, I need to write a poem per day. And I just did. And sometimes I skipped one day, and other days I did like 2 or 3.
So it was like it's very practical. It's like just
I did cheat a little bit.
Sorry? It was like just doing a workout. I mean, if you do push-ups every day, you'll be ripped eventually or whatever.
Yeah. As I said, I had a whole backlog of poetry that I had already written long ago in different languages. So
copy paste.
Not copy paste. I did translate it and things like that. But I made some edits as well. But it's maybe like 10% of the poems. It's not that many. I wrote a lot of original poetry.
Bro, you're prolific if that's all you tapped into. I mean, you wrote a lot of poetry.
Yeah, so the book is like 100 poems. And
that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that means you've written over 1,000 according to your own maths here.
I could show you if you'd like. My old blog has like, I think it's about 1,000. Yeah, for sure.
So,
but it's not all good though.
Well, that's the nature of art. It's not all going to be Bohemian Rhapsody always or whatever. But so, oh shit, what was I just about to ask? I'm having so many brain farts today. I'm not even sweating it. I guess Uranus and Gemini is really kind of popping my brain. I was going to ask something about not poetry, but Raphael, you got any questions or comments? You're rather poetic yourself, Raphael. I think you're bitten by the muses.
Bitten, yes, yeah. Poetic, maybe sometimes. So I'm highly amused by your conversation. I just want to keep listening. I have nothing particular that I want to ask, but I like where the conversation is going.
This is about my backlog.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh wait, I'll show it on screen.
Here's the master file.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask about blogging. I mean, okay, so when did you get into blogging? I think Raphael blogs. I've never blogged. I mean, I guess I use Facebook as a kind of blog with posts and shit, but I don't blog with like full-on prose. Like statements and like articles or however you go to put it. How did you turn on to blogging? Why do you think that's the best method? I mean, in a sense, you can skin a cat any which way, but you're very literary. Were you just like, I need to write this down and transcribe this? What turned you on to blogging? I mean, I don't blog. Does Xirtus blog? Raphael does blog, I think.
I mean, the thing is, like,
not really currently.
It would be. I wouldn't even know how to if I could tell you, to be honest. Like I started, because the thing before I started this one, like the Manifestopheles blog, which is it's now been in disuse since 2020.
What does that mean to you, Manifestopheles? Like, what is the joke there? And
Well,
what does it mean to you?
That's a funny story, actually,
Okay.
because it's I don't know. I don't remember how I came up with that name, but I Googled it at some point, and I found out that there was some kind of software designer or something that was before AI. That was back in 2010 or something when I Googled it, and so he was like back in, I don't know, 2003 or whatever. And he was trying to create a software program, an algorithm, to simulate like the madness of inspiration. That was literally, I was like, so that's
an algorithm for the muse biting you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now we have AI doing basically just that, right? That's pretty funny as well. But
so I mean, obviously, I read it, and it does. I mean, manifesto, like a communist manifesto, and then Opheles. What does Opheles mean in Greek?
No, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It comes from Mephistopheles, right? So if you've heard of Faust, the Faustian bargain, right? The demon, the devil, let's say in that story is called. His name is Mephistopheles, right? So Faust signs the contract. He gains immortality and all the knowledge and whatever, but his life ends in tragedy. Blah blah blah. So my idea behind that was that, like, basically every manifesto is a deal with the devil, basically, right? So no matter if you're a communist or a
capitalist or whatever,
or whatever, if you're trying to package reality in like an ideological framework, you're basically throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? You're setting out your worth.
Explain that a little, because you're signing away. So you're saying if you kind of try to make something concretized, you're gonna miss.
No, not concretized, but if you're trying to, because like reality isn't as simple as to be able to be codified, let's say, in like an ideological framework, like communism or like something like that, right? So we don't have the capacity, I think, to create a complete system, let's say, that will codify reality like as it is,
because it's not dynamic enough, right?
Yeah, no, because we're still limited by our language, by our knowledge, by our short-sightedness, by our limits, let's say our physical limits, and we're not able to have this oversight to be actually, to create a functional system. And we're not supposed to create it. We're not supposed to do that, like reality is not here to be controlled.
It reminds me a little of the Buddhist
in that sense.
Like a flower's pretty, but when you pluck it or take a butterfly and like taxidermy it or whatever, you're missing the point. You might get aspects of it, but you're missing like the spirit of it in some sense. Is that kind of what you're saying? When you codify it through language, a philosophy, it's not even going to have.
Yeah, I mean, you can only exactly. So that's been one of the main problems for philosophy. I'm a philosophy graduate, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that.
No.
Yeah, I studied in Holland.
Descartes approved.
Yeah.
Haven't you noticed by now, Jim?
Well, no, I just thought he was a Virgo, man. I was like, Mercury Virgo. He's the fucking librarian.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote my thesis about art, right? So that was within a philosophical framework based on Aristotle, Nietzsche, and Kant and Heidegger.
I kind of want to go down that rabbit hole, but you were saying something first. So I don't want to cut off your thought.
I know. That happens a lot, but
maybe they kind of twain together. We're talking about basically like, here's the manifesto, Manifestopheles. I can't even say it.
Well, so the main problem has always been what about our words is it that defines anything about reality, right? So it's like. Language is a complete, like it's almost like you're remembering two things at the same time. You say the word house, right, and at the same time you have a picture of the house, and somehow your brain makes that connection, but there's nothing about the word that actually refers to the thing, right? There's nothing about the word.
You mean intrinsically?
Intrinsically, exactly, right? And obviously in another language it will be a different word and things like that. So how, and so the question is then, if we don't know what the origin is of language and how it relates to reality, how can we even
Speak about it.
say we're searching for the truth, we're trying to express the truth and things like that? Obviously pragmatically, that's it's still possible, because it happens all the time, right? If I tell you a truth, and your mind is blown, you understood what I said. It's not like there's some sort of mystery there. But if you try to think about it, it doesn't seem to work out, right? But at the same time, I do think, obviously there's a lot of power in language and things like that, and you can make things happen and stuff like that. But I think we're not able to, and I mean, that might still be a theory. That's just where the name came from. I'm still,
Playing with ideas.
How do you say? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not so okay.
But,
I mean,
obviously, I don't think we're able to codify reality into an ideology or a metaphysical theory or something that will actually work, or that will actually explain how things work.
I quoted Wittgenstein already, and I'm not like a big philosopher, but Terence McKenna once was like quoting Wittgenstein and saying, "There's close enough." Basically,
Yeah.
it's like there's not going to ever be an exactitude. I don't think, and that's one of the maybe the funny things about postmodernism, in the sense that we're like, hey, it is interpreted, hey, it is based off of a lot of factors of viewership, and so essentially, so it's like you were saying, if you say house, it's not going to mean exactly the same thing. There's no carbon copy meanings here, which gets funny, because if you look at things like whether it's Sharia law or the Ten Commandments or whatever, it's like maybe the Ten Commandments is a better example, because I can't speak about Sharia law, but Ten Commandments is trying to get to, it's like, hey, this is, I've heard it best put by Tim Keller, where it's just like, these are really good ideas, if you want to put it that way. These are really good ideas for social fabric weaving. So it's like, if you don't go fuck your neighbor's wife, and you don't steal shit, and you don't, you respect your parents, like, it's going to create a culture where maybe better things could occur.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's absolutely necessary, but I guess, because who knows, but it seems it has a result. Anyway, tell us a little about your thesis. I mean, you don't have to go into that, but you were talking about Immanuel Kant and Nietzsche and stuff. It's like, what was the through line?
The through line was basically the dichotomy between techne and musique. So technique and art, let's say, the higher form of art, which you can literally find in all these philosophers in different terms. So Plato calls it mimesis and enthusiasmos. So mimesis is imitation, right? You imitate reality.
Is that where we get memes?
Yeah,
Okay.
literally. Yeah, of course. And enthusiasmos is enthusiasm, right? But that's the ancient term for inspiration, because that comes from enthus. Enthus is God. So inspiration, literally, but like
God in you, kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
exactly. And theogen is like, same idea.
But that refers again to that ecstatic experience. And then later Aristotle, he codified it through techne and musique. And then he talks about how, like, the tragedy is the highest form of musique, because it brings about that catharsis through the ecstatic experience, let's say. And that has to do with how we relate to the inevitability of the protagonist's actions, which lead to tragedy, right? So we relate to the protagonist. The protagonist has no oversight over his life, right? So he only has a certain perspective and a certain idea of what's right and wrong. And based on his idea of what's right, like for example, Antigone, right? So Antigone fought her uncle, who was a tyrant, who, he how do you say, he dethroned his brother and became king.
Mm-hmm.
And because he did that, like the lion who defeats, the alpha male who defeats the other male, who kills his offspring, kind of like that. He tried to kind of kill off the people who were for his brother, let's say, who were his supporters, right? And so Antigone's brother fought against his uncle in one battle, and he died. And so Antigone wanted to bury him because, how do you say, like tradition or like custom dictates to bury the dead, while her uncle, the tyrant, was of the opinion that we're not going to do that because he was a traitor, right? So, and the law dictates that traitors are not to be buried. And so she goes out to bury him, but gets punished and gets buried alive with him and stuff like that.
I've never heard this story. I mean, I'm not that culturally savvy.
Yeah, but that's a tragedy,
crazy,
right?
Yeah,
and
it's unfortunate.
Like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but like if you read the story, it's basically like an equation, right? So both have their idea of what's right, and both need to follow through, even if that leads to tragedy, basically.
Problems.
Yeah,
it reminds me a little of Les Miserables.
Bringing that how do you say? Bringing that epiphany, let's say, to the viewer, is the goal of tragedy, and that's what brings about ecstasy and catharsis, because you're able to step outside of yourself and relate to another human being.
It kind of reminds me of synthesizing paradox. I mean, you're going to see two different timelines that have very different results. I don't know how familiar you are with Victor Hugo and Les Miserables, a really great book, a great musical, whatever. But you got like Jean Valjean and Javert, and they are on totally different. It's like, positive, negative polarities of a battery, and I mean, I guess that's the whole point. It's tragic in the sense that causes. So what do you think the mechanic is, maybe too strong a word, but what do you think is occurring in the psyche of humans when we see something from an observational point that lends itself to becoming a tragedy? Like they're saying you're going to have an not apotheosis, but an epiphany or something.
Yeah.
When you watch, oh my God, she's going to the cliff's edge and we know there's sharks down there and she's going to slip off or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What do you think the mechanic psychologically is behind that?
Well,
like empathy in a weird way, where we're like,
yeah, shit. I mean, it's empathy on one hand, obviously. On the other, it's also that we have the thing is, obviously, as the public, as the viewer, right? You have a privileged position compared to the protagonist, right? Because you know the story, you know what's happening behind the scenes, and you know what's going to happen, like to some degree, not always, but it depends.
We'll call it fourth wall privilege.
But yeah, exactly. But the funny thing is, like in ancient Greek tragedy, you even had like the chorus, and the chorus was literally a choir that represented the public. But there was at the same time also the narrator, right? So you had a choir that was telling the story behind the scenes, which
narrating,
was
essentially.
Yeah, narrating. Yeah. So which was basically like the exposition, right? That the public needed to know, let's say, to make sense of the story. But it was done in like this, like transcendental, like. How do you say, otherworldly way, let's say, because it was a choir of people, and they were called, and it's funny too, because like they were called the chorus, but there's a funny thing about that, because like the tragedy is like, the word tragedy, literally, like the etymology means like the song of the goats. Trago o dia.
Okay, so what is that implying?
Well, it's Bacchic. It's a Bacchic tradition, obviously. That it comes from the orgies of Bacchus and Dionysus and stuff like that, right?
I guess you're the expert. I have no clue. You're blowing my mind. I'm like, okay, so what were they? How much are they trying to tie in goats? So, in a Bacchanalian sense, this was an important archetype.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, and it was so important that they formalized it in a how do you say, like a theatrical
like a
because
motif,
it was an institution. Style. It was an institution of the state, right? So you were actually expected to go visit these theaters and see those shows.
This is so random, but not at all.
Edifying.
What you just said kind of it ties in. So given the way people governed and believed in the past, and and obviously we don't necessarily do it exactly the same way nowadays. What do you think the best aspect, like the fact that the state made people go to concerts essentially? Do you think there's what? This is a weird way to put it. What do you think the best things of the past are that we don't do, and then maybe we should revive? Like, or if does that make sense? What I'm even trying to say, like, there's things that they used to do, like what you just said. Oh my gosh, it was a state mandate. Like even the Ellis Indian Mysteries, it was like everybody gets one trip, and you get to see the magic show, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Are there are there things from antiquity that we can draw from in modernity that we've become devoid, that we've lost? Like what, like we have a lot going on in modernity at one level, but at the same time it feels like we're searching for meaning in a very real way. Like it's,
well, I mean,
dark.
I don't know. It's a dangerous path to go down, because especially, obviously, at least if we believe what is being written about the Eleusinian mysteries, personally, I don't find them that appealing. I find the mythology behind it pretty interesting for sure. I'm definitely interested, and like it's how do you say, it's ties with Gnosticism and Christianity and stuff are fascinating. And it's,
my impression of it was basically people were just tripping on ergot beer or whatever, like LSD-esque beer, and that they were kind of watching, I guess, a performance of the Persephone thing.
I have a fitting question to this.
Okay. Yeah.
Which philosopher used the most mind-altering substances according
somebody
to your perspective?
Yeah, somebody said Aldous Huxley, and I was like, well,
that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, that does make sense.
But Plato and all those dudes did the Eleusinian thing, so I mean, yeah. Are they?
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
Aristotle maybe. A bunch of people did.
Yeah.
My internet's off. I can't look at it. But on my phone. Yeah, I guess.
Well,
are there any philosophers?
I don't know about that, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, he's gonna plead the fifth, as we say in America.
Well, okay, so Nietzsche did a lot of opium and stuff like that. So maybe that for sure. I mean, he was, he also went to Switzerland, like to like those hospitals they had there and stuff like that for months on end, and he did a bunch of stuff.
I know, so I'm so much less cultured than Xirtus or Raphael and a lot of things. Nietzsche to me is just like, oh, he was an angry vegetarian dealing with,
Yeah, that too. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
I like this stuff.
I know more than I do, but I did read Thus Spoke Zarathustra, I guess would be the English version. And maybe you would actually know Manifestopheles, whether the English version is any good. In German, I have to say, when I read it, this some time ago, but still, I was pretty impressed by the wordplay, the meaning, and it was complex enough to be able to understand it. It made sense to me, the allegories and so on, but it was also entertaining to read, or how do you say, you had to read it, at least me, with your full attention to, catch all the meanings and the
I feel like it has a lot of classic like alchemical and, sort of tarot adjacent imagery, with the fool and the tightrope dancer and things like that, very, very archetypal and stuff. And it's funny too, because he was inspired to write it in Switzerland when he found like a pyramid somewhere in the woods. And it's like, it's one of those stories where you're like, okay,
he created an artificial history. He alternative history. He filled it in the gaps. This is the story of the pyramid. This is how it came about.
And it's funny for sure, because Switzerland is one of my big rabbit holes as well.
I've been there for a year plus. I love
Switzerland. Oh, you have? Interesting. Yeah. Because I don't know if you know Sean Ross and stuff like that. Because I've been very fascinated. I've been watching that guy since 2011 or something.
I don't know him, but I'll send me some stuff privately and I'll check out stuff.
Yeah, he basically. Go ahead. Yeah, he basically says like Switzerland is the base of all evil, and they financed Hitler and things like that. And,
I could see some of the stuff. I mean, I think they have the highest. It's not pedophilia. What, incest? They have the highest incest rate in Europe or something like that. There's a bunch of kids in the woods and up in the mountains not doing shit. You mentioned very briefly in just passing that they corresponded with Tarot and stuff. Let's talk about your upcoming book. You've got a book on Tarot coming out.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I mean, I just got started. It's like in the works now, and I'm still
the embryological phase.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm pretty excited about it.
What's the goal?
Yeah. Okay. So literally, like my inspiration was Balatro. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Say it again.
Balatro. It's a video game,
I don't know
and it's
that
kind
one.
of like
It's a
yeah,
great
it's
game. That's the only type
yeah.
of gambling which is not gambling that I can condone. It's pretty fun.
I mean, it's a roguelike solitaire poker simulator, right?
Okay.
And you
Okay.
yeah, and so you make poker hands to get the biggest hand and like make the most points, and like you have each level you have like a chip with a certain number of points that you gotta beat, and then you got boss those are called blinds, and then you have boss blinds and you need to beat those, and you have a bunch of jokers that give you a bunch of buffs and stuff like that. And I was like, and the thing is, like, I had bought it last year and I don't even remember when, and I knew I had it for a while. And then at some point I just decided, okay, because I went through a couple of like spicy phases, let's say, with ladies and stuff like that, where I was laying a lot of cards and stuff like that. And I was like getting a bit tired of the normal way of reading the tarot. So I was like, let's play some Balatro, And suddenly it clicked. I was like, okay, so I'm going to make a new tarot reading method based on poker hands, right? So instead of laying out the spread like a Celtic cross or like, I don't know, like a French cross or like a 3-card spread or a 1-card spread or whatever, you basically lay out 7 cards, discard up to 5 cards, and make up your hand as you draw more cards, as you replace the cards up to 5, and then you see what comes out. So you actually get to play with the spread, and then you make an interpretation, and then each hand, obviously. So in poker you have like 10 hands, right? You have high cards, pair, 2 pair, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, full house, straight, and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each of those has a meaning of its own. So they're like separate spreads, basically. And then obviously I had to make some extra. Okay, so that's the idea, right? So you make poker hands with tarot cards, and you read them as they come out.
I've never
That's
played
basically
Yu-Gi-Oh,
the
but it
system.
almost seems like that a little, like Yu-Gi-Oh or something, Magic the Gathering, where it's like, all right, we're gonna play this a little differently.
So there's a few adjustments I had to make, obviously, because tarot has 78 cards instead of 52 or 54 if you count the pokers. So basically what I did is for the major arcana is like the cards 1 to 10 and 11 to 20 are all wild cards for the pips. So 1 and 11 can replace any 1. And so on. So 2 and 12 can replace any 2. 3 and 13 can replace any 3, and so on. And then like 0 and the world, the Fool and the world, can replace any court cards, which are basically like, kings, queens, knights, and pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a couple of changes in the hands as well. Well, just one actually in the major flush. So if you got a major flush, you need an ace, king, a queen, a page, a knight, and a page. So the knight comes instead of the 10, right? In poker, you need a 10. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. But I also made a couple of hands for just major cards, right? So if you only get majors, you can get a major straight, a major flush, or a major royale.
I'm impressed with how cogent you are, because this is some Mercury and Virgo shit. You are crossing your T's and dotting your I's. I'm like trying to visualize this, and I feel like I'm on.
I could actually follow along, but I did play Balatro. Otherwise, I would have no idea about.
Yeah. I mean, if you played Balatro, it makes a lot more sense. Yeah, or poker. If you know poker, it's a breeze.
I just turned my girlfriend on to playing poker the other day, so poker's what's up.
Nice.
Texas Hold'em, but whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so
this is more based on 7-card stud, but it's the same thing. The only difference is that because you're not playing against someone else, you get to see all the cards. Or I've made 2 methods. You have the open hand, where you can see all the 7 cards and discard up to 5 of them, whichever you want. And then you have the hidden hand, which is 2 cards. The first 2 cards are hidden, and you can only discard the other 5 cards and make up your hand, and then you can reveal the other 2. So that one's like a hard mode, you know.
It's it's funny. And is there anything else you want to talk about because you just said the word hand, and the last fucking chapter I read in this Warhammer 40K book I'm reading was talking about like we got to go find this hand, blah blah blah. And I'm like, haha, synchronicity. But
Yeah.
I mean, you did succinctly, thank you, explain how to do that. I'm sure if I go back and listen to this, it will make more sense. I felt like I was just being bombarded by maths, just that I was like, what?
Actually, I can ask the proper Warhammer 40K question.
Oh boy.
Because before I would have said you should be able to describe scenarios in alternative history through Warhammer 40K, but the question actually now is a little bit different, which is, to what extent would you say that whatever is presented in Warhammer 40K in some way, shape, or form may relate to some of the more popular alternative history theories, like what Fomenko is speaking of, for example?
I mean, I've thought about that, but and I mean, so definitely like the whole backstory of the Space Marines and stuff comes pretty close in a lot of ways. But obviously, there's a lot that GW also takes from mainstream history and also from like mainstream cosmology in general, if you'd like, because obviously we're talking about a normal sci-fi world with planets and stuff like that.
He asked you a rather complicated question.
You have this whole
yeah.
Well, so like one of the
exactly.
things that I was really that I noticed pretty early on, because that's one of the things that got me into the whole Tartaria business as well. It's like before I ever got into that, like as a kid, like one of the first armies I wanted to make and ended up making for Warhammer 40K was a White Scar army, right? So the White Scars are the Space Mongolians.
Mm-hmm.
And they're dressed in white power armor, and they ride motorcycles, right? That's even before like all these throat singing bands came out with motorcycles and stuff like that. So that became like that entered our like how do you say, collective subconscious, and reached even Mongolia itself, you know. or it's just something that's so how do you say, self-evident that they would like veer into motorcycles after, you know, leaving horses behind, or like after modernizing, you know.
It's their windmill, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I hear you, bro. The Khan is an amazing Primarch, by the way. He's one of the more
I love him
and
too.
his shit getting beaten out by Mortarion was gnarly. That's one of the gnarliest. I don't know if you read Siege of Terra books, but my god. All right, well, hold on. If you can answer Raphael's question, do it. But we don't have to talk for an hour or anything. We can start wrapping it down. But Warhammer 40K, I'm a big thing. I have 10th edition. I assembled it, but I haven't painted it. I've never even fucking played yet. I'm always trying to get my girlfriend. I'm like, will you play?
I know. I do the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, God damn it. How did you hear about it? It sounds like you've been doing it for a long time, as a kid, even.
Yeah.
And how into the lore are you? And then we can help me if you can. Anybody listening can do this. Like, it's Shakespearean at the level of archetype. Not every book is like a fucking 10, but like most of the lore that I've read is like, not only is it the most succinct alchemical modern zeitgeist tool for me, where I'm like, I can't explain it, but it's like the way we would have a zodiac or maybe like 7 days of the week or something. It's like now fractal that or something like that. It's just like this constant fractaling of archetype. And I'll say this and then I'll shut the fuck up. Whenever I'm reading, and it's uncanny, it's almost like bibliomancy for me or something. Whenever I'm reading something, like when Israel and Palestine shit started popping off last October, I guess. I was reading, I couldn't tell you what exactly, but some one of the fucking Horus Heresy books about like, well, there's terrorists and we have, you know, I think it was Dark Angels, but it might have been fucking Smurfs, I forget. When I say Smurfs, you know what I mean, Ultramarines. No matter, well, my point is this, I don't have to get into the details. When I'm reading this stuff, it seems to resonate with the external, which I shouldn't be surprised about given how much magic and like shit like Raphael we're aware of, right? Psychedelic, kind of as above so blowing, but it feels like never ending story a little. I'm like, I'm reading this shit and I'm like, the things I'm personally dealing with as a character, as a human being, and trying to like master whatever, my bravery or you know, or the dark stuff, looking at your, you know, whatever, wherever I'm at, I'm resonating with it. It's so bizarre. Anyway, I'll shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I still want Games Workshop to one day, or the Black Library even better, to one day release the Emperor's Tarot as a tarot deck you can actually use.
I have that handle on Instagram.
Awesome,
the Emperor's Tarot, like, yeah, Rafa doesn't even know. So they even get into tarot. I mean, dude, So this is where I start geeking out and like spiraling, where I can't even articulate. It feels like trying to talk about the Library of Alexandria to like somebody who like likes
Well, you know what? You know what? It's a British company. They might as well have stolen the Library of Alexandria and just using it to make a fucking crummy miniature war game, just have all this fucking shit. But the other thing is also, so for example, right? So Games Workshop has 3 subsidiaries. You have Games Workshop, Citadel Miniatures, you have Forge World, and you have the Black Library. And so the Black Library is at the same time is their publishing company, but in the lore, it's the Black Library is like an interdimensional like
Eldari
knowledge,
thing,
Eldari hub of knowledge that the Harlequins have access to, if I remember correctly.
I think you're
right.
So
what that means, so it's basically the Akashic Library, right? And it's basically like the,
I mean, it's the Akash. Yeah,
so
basically.
I wouldn't even be surprised. I mean, this is almost like, I don't even think we need to debate this, but like Games Workshop is probably like choke full with Freemasons and things like that who do very well what they're doing. Stuff like that, and they have their internal mythology, and their lore and their stuff, and that's where they're drawing inspiration from, And I mean, obviously, people say they've stolen from a bunch of other, which they have, from other IPs like Elric of Melniboné. That's where they got the Chaos sign from. And Judge Dredd. That's where the Adeptus Arbites come from, and things like that. But at the same time, I also think that all these artists and all these these comic companies and stuff like that, they're all in on the same game. I mean, I don't think they would have stolen it if that was an issue.
Well, it's not even stealing. Talking about muses and inspiration and shit like that. I feel like for whatever, and it's not exactly the same, but I feel like creativity is this well, and we're all ladling and drinking from different angles of approach and stuff. So it's not terribly. It's not. How do I put it?
It's not a big deal.
Well, it's not only not a big deal, but it's to be expected, I guess. It's kind of like the idea with like pyramids popping up and down in South America and Egypt and all this stuff. It's like people are jamming, whether it's a kind of a noosphere kind of thing where it's like once one monkey pops, the 100th monkey, and now everybody gets it. It feels like they're tapping into things that like even like the Necron or like Terminator or whatever, right? But it's like, okay, but this is in the zeitgeist now anyway. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but I never feel like they're outright plagiarizing. I just feel like they've basically taken literally every genre of fantasy and literature and horror or whatever, and they're like, put it in a blender and just make it ours. I mean, if you're into BDSM and stuff and crazy gothic, because basically the whole universe is grimdark. So it's like, it's going to be the most ratchet archetypes. But if you're into, honor and being like a good steward of data, it's like, you're going to like the Ultramarines. The Dark Eldar, or if you're into crazy like horrible homunculi stuff, like what I'm saying, like it can get dark. Anyway, it's the most entertaining thing, and I'm always an apologist at this point for it. Where I'm like, people, if you want to do like the most legal drug, go read some Warhammer lore, and you're gonna spin out and just like. What?
But I mean, it's so what I think part of the trick is, at least, definitely, is that it remains open-ended, right? So all the characters are archetypal, but that also means that they're vague enough for us to be able to project ourselves onto them. And that's basically how the whole universe works, right? And the universe is big enough and open-ended enough for you to project your own lore into it. And so that's what a lot of hobbyists are doing with their armies and stuff like that. So they're trying to create like, and I do it too, like with my
you got a homebrew kit.
Well, not exactly, because like you can't really homebrew in Warhammer 40k, but you can, or at least not in 10th edition. At least not with the rules. You can with like characters and with miniatures and stuff like that. But what was I saying?
Projections of archetypes that we can read into it. It's almost like a tabula rosa, or it's like this crazy whatever. If it's one of these things, if and I know because you're into it. So it's like, if you look into the Philosopher's Stone, you're going to see every fucking color possible or whatever. It's like, it's the alchemical transcendental object.
What do you guys think of this idea that, I guess, referring to Games Workshop, it's not creativity or imagination, it's revealing the occult in an authorized way?
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. Rick Priestley, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to.
Um,
We'll have to get you and some other
well, I
people who are
mean,
into
yeah.
40k
So
to like
Trench Crusade is
philosophically talk
another
about it.
thing. Yeah,
What
it's
is Trench
similar.
Crusade? I've heard
Well,
of that. It's a new game or
yeah,
something, right?
it's
Yeah.
a new game, and it's intended as competition, let's say, for Warhammer 40k, and they're doing a similar thing. But yeah, I mean, it's I mean, we'll have to see if it's as successful as Warhammer 40k has been. I mean, the thing is, like, Warhammer Fantasy hasn't been nearly as successful either.
It does nothing for me. I've looked at it and
Yeah.
be like, "No, okay, cool, whatever."
Yeah, I mean, Age of Sigmar is cool as a game. That is interesting now, and I mean that's a recent development as well, relatively, because it started out, people weren't happy about it, and they shafted Warhammer Fantasy, and so yeah, it was a bit of a thing. But now that it's been out for so many years, and there's been a few new additions and stuff, it actually turned out to be a good game. So I mean, at least that's interesting. But Warhammer 40k is really their bread and butter. That's where all the money comes from, but that's also where all the lore goes to, and where all the work goes to nowadays.
Yeah, it's the magnum opus for the
So,
company. So,
yeah.
we can start winding down, but I'm curious, as a fencer, somebody who does a kind of a martial thing, like, are you saying, for the emperor when you fight, or like how much of your life is what turned you on to fencing? This is so random at the end of an episode, but whatever. What turned you on to fencing, and what do you draw from that practice? And did Warhammer inspire that in any way, or not really?
Well, no, Warhammer came later, but although no, it's actually debatable. But so okay, so as I said, I grew up with stories of my ancestors and stuff, and as a kid, I always liked knights, and Playmobiles with knights and Legos and stuff like that. So I always liked that. And at some point in elementary school in Germany,
So you're a Dark Angel fan? I'm kidding.
I
I'm
used
kidding.
to
I'm
be.
kidding.
I mean, I used to be, and I like the Raven wing, but I just like the white scars a bit more. It's just, I don't know. I've always kind of edged that line, but I never really got into them.
I didn't mean to take you off the topic. I just thought that was funny. I was like, yeah, of course, Dark Angels. Every archetype, folks. Anyway, so
I like their style though, for sure, and I like Cypher.
Dude, I don't even. We're gonna have to get you on just for a 40k geek out. I mean, we touched on it here, but it's like, Raphael, we will walk you through some shit. So you, because of the lore of your own family and stuff, you were turned on to the
so
stuff.
basically my first my first contact was in elementary school in Germany, when a fencing club came to our school to do a demonstration and stuff like that, to see if they could get any new students.
They were evangelizing,
and I tried it out. Yeah, exactly. And I tried it out, and it was fun. I liked it, but I never really took that step. I was still young and stuff, and but yeah, but then after we moved to Greece, something had happened, and my mother had gone to, or no, that was still in Germany actually. So one day my mother went to church with my little brother. He was the third in line, and she was watching him as he was playing in the playground, and some lady told her that he would be a good fit because he had like good, I don't know, he was very, very nimble. She told her he would be a good fit for fencing. So that kind of stuck with her. And then after we moved to Greece, she decided to look into it. And so she wanted to send him for fencing. And I was like, Mom, why don't you send me too, So we went both together. And then I ended up being the one taking up the sport. And I started at around 12 years old. So I've been into it for more than 20 years, but it's been like on and off. Some years I don't go, especially in Holland. There were like 1 or 2 years before I when I first moved there, before I started going again. And then, once I joined Leiden University, that's where once I enrolled there, that's when I started going, because they had a fencing club there. And then after I came back, it took me another few years. Actually, after I came back, I started right away at the new club here in Athens, where I'm in Piraeus, actually, where I'm officially still until today, but I haven't been in a while again because I've had some health issues and a relocation and this and that. But so it comes and goes a little bit. And I've never been, even though I'm pretty good, it's kind of like bicycle for me. You know, I can just do it like once I put on my suit and hold a épée, which is my weapon. I can do the, you know, do the steps and things like that. But, you know, obviously I'm getting older and a bit slower, and I've never actually been like a high performing athlete or anything. It's just something I've been doing all my life.
Don't cut yourself short. I mean, you've got Mars in fucking 5th house Aries. You have energy for it.
Sure.
You're like, I'm enthusiastic about fighting.
For sure.
You might not want to actually
I
get
pretty
in fights
good sometimes.
Yeah, so that's a good outlet. I guess that's it's funny that you found that. And the fact that I mean, it's very Virgoan in that it's very demure. It's not just like barbaric, like, you know, axe wielding or something. It's just like, all right, repost. And
but like my current teacher also does HEMA, so I've done some HEMA as well. So I've done some Dusek. So my actual favorite weapon, if we're talking about real weapons and stuff, is the cutlass.
Okay.
Which is pretty short. You know, you can use it in closed confines, in closed spaces. They use it on ships, but it's basically like a chopping block. It's like it's a meat cleaver. It's such a terrifying weapon, actually, if you think about it. But it's just the Dusek is the medieval version of that. It's one of the basic weapons you learn in HEMA. So you get both like a basic training, and I learned my favorite weapon. You know, so it's two birds with one stone, as they say.
I don't know if you're into Star Trek or at all. You might not be. I mean, it's whatever. But when you said what's my favorite weapon or something, for some reason I was thinking of Worf and his like Klingon blade, because they're all about warrior culture in a weird way. Yeah, it's like you're very demure and together and like, you know, soft and poetic and all this stuff. So it's not like I don't look at you as frothing at the mouth to go kill people, but you do have a warrior's heart. So it's not terribly surprising that happened. Anyway. We should probably start winding down. I know that it's a little late for Raphael.
Me too. I got a trip tomorrow.
That's true. I hope you have good travels, sir. It's good to meet you. You're cool. We'll keep in touch and probably get you back on and geek out about 40K and other stuff. I want to apologize. Yeah. I mean, I tried my best to peck at the bread on the ground as a duck might, but speak of birds, but it's like I could have been much more prepared for this and read some of your stuff. I appreciate you reading the poetry and hanging out with the idioso. Like myself, but
you should stop sending yourself short, man.
It's whatever. Hey, 5 of Swords. It's like, oh my god, battling my inner demons is like, oh, I was distracted and busy and doing other shit. And it's like, oh, that's poor journalism or something like that. So, I appreciate you giving us time and energy. Well, it's just real talk. It's like Jesus Christ. It's like going, like I said earlier, maybe it's like going on a date with no chocolates or a condom, even though I don't fucking fuck condoms. But anyway. In any event, TMI probably. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and geeking with us. Your team rabbit hole is fuck just because you're a genius and you're doing cool stuff, but you're also like normal. If that makes, to me, it's normal to read 40K, and you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You're very unique and weird, but at the same time, you're cool. Here comes the music. I hear it already. So yeah, if there's any parting thoughts, you can let us know now, I guess. But like I said, guys, this is Team Rabbit Hole as fuck. Like, find the others. They're out there. There's weird, cool people. They like big boobs, whatever. It's all good.
Exactly. Well, it's been awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on. So I don't know how this is gonna go with my new book and stuff. I'll keep you guys posted. I was thinking about starting a Substack or whatever, but I'm not good at handling that kind of stuff. So basically, I'm planning on publishing it on my own. I have some experience with my previous book, so I'm just going to do it on Ingram Spark, so it's going to be pretty easy as long as I buy the ISBN myself. But I'll be posting links. I might do some videos on my channel. I've been thinking about that, doing like some spreads on my channel someday.
Do it.
But I need to get like a top-down camera thingy.
I was going to ask you to pull them earlier, but I was like, this won't look right, and it's random. But do a video on that. I would watch that. If I could see what's going on, I'll get what's going on. So yeah,
exactly. I'll definitely do that.
All right, Alexander.
All right, guys.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Raphael. Thanks as always.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for listening. As always, enjoy yourselves, find the others. Have fun, guys.
Groove out to Raphael's track.